I have now spotlighted myself, and I'll welcome everybody in here who's joining us in the Zoom. So hi, everybody, and welcome to the first of our live lab walkthrough events. At Wastescapes, we endeavor to connect people with what research looks like via process-based explorations. And this often means inviting faculty members and students into the space itself for live events that activate ongoing projects. Sometimes, however, connecting audiences with ongoing research is best done in situ. So to that end, we developed a lab walkthrough video series whereby we visit labs, studios, and other spaces you might not even be aware of across both Concordia campuses where things happen. Once we're on site, we speak with researchers about their work and focus in on the tools of one's research, the materials, spaces, people, and processes involved in one's research process. Normally, this is a closed set event with weeks of post-production work that culminates in a short video project. But for this lab walkthrough sub-series, if we can call it that, we partnered with 3 current courses led by Rebecca Duclos, Juan Ortiz Apuy, and Alice Jarry to allow their students who are variously engaged in critical materiality to have access to these sites with researchers live. Cecilia McKinnon, an intermedia artist and curator, is generously acting as our facilitator and interviewer for this series. So you'll see Cecilia soon. And she has gathered questions submitted by students from these courses. So we are joined today by Liz Miller on site at Grey Nuns and at Concordia University Center for Creative Reuse, aka CUCCR. So we'll be in 2 sites today. Liz is a documentary maker and communication studies professor interested in new approaches to community collaborations and documentary as a way to connect personal stories to larger societal concerns. Today, we'll be speaking namely about Liz's Wastescapes project. So on that note, I'll pass it over to you, Liz. Hi, nice to see you.
Okay, Liz, we're over to you now.
Thank you so much, Anna. And just want to welcome you to this particular lab walk. My name is Liz Miller, and I'm really interested in this idea of walks and tours and using new media to augment what we might perceive with our bodies through embodied pedagogies. We are at the Grey Nuns lot here at Concordia University, and I'm standing in front of this green bin, which is where a lot of our trash at Concordia is stored and then taken away by a transnational corporate company called Matrix. And you might just walk 100 times on your way to the cafeteria to the left, or to classes, or to another food place in the area. But today I wanted to pause and share with you an app that would augment your understanding of how waste is managed at Concordia University. So in collaboration with a colleague of mine, MJ Thompson,
Anna, unmute the mic.
We developed this course and app called Wastescapes. And the idea was to think carefully about waste in our city, about the values of waste, the aesthetics of waste. It's a whole different set of critical research questions about how we produce waste, how we manage waste, and what is the waste that goes on beyond our own lives, the matter of waste.
Sorry, Doug, we lost sound there. If you can unmute the camera mic again. I can't unmute Liz's mic. I can just ask to unmute. Sorry about that. We just lost some sound. Thanks, folks. Thanks for your patience. While they're setting that up, thanks again so much for being here. And sorry, this is our first go. We're good to go again. That sounds great. Thanks, Liz. Sorry to cut you off.
We're good.
Go for it.
Sorry.
So I wanted to explain how this app, Wastescapes, works. It's like Pokemon, but a little bit different in that you do have to be in the site in order to unlock the content. And if you were here with me, basically
content would be unlocked to tell you about waste management in this particular site at Concordia. The voice you would hear would be Faisal, who is an unbelievably committed PhD student and staff person at our university. He is the waste management consultant, but he's also in charge of zero waste at Concordia. And he talks you through the decision to go with Matrix, everything we do with compost on site, and basically illuminates all the surround of this site. And a lot of things that we never as students or faculty or staff think about here at Concordia University. This is one of 40 sites throughout the city. We have guided tours, DIY guided tours throughout the city. So you can go alone, on foot, on bike. But there's a couple that we've decided to feature at Concordia because of the kind of groundbreaking initiatives that are happening here. So after we are here at this site with Faisal's also, we're gonna unlock the site and meet another amazing initiative just around the corner. All right. Going first is always hard, huh?
So,
That was great. Thanks, Liz.
You know what I think would be super cool? So students are watching this right now? Students are watching this?
Yep,
Wow.
there are people here
Okay.
live in the Zoom with us. I know Liz can't hear us.
Oh,
So-
okay.
So I don't know if Cecilia's jumping in now to speak with Liz or if we're moving down to CUCCR.
do we want to move to CUCCR now, or do you want to do the questions now?
Let's do one or two questions to give it sort of some pacing. And then she'll be in the shot, or I'll be out of the shot.
I'll reframe them so you get together.
And then I am the mic. So you're gonna have to be
I'll sing out, yeah.
singing.
Douglas, we can hear Cecilia quite well, Doug. So good.
And we kind of look towards them, I guess, yeah.
So an initial question I had dealing with this site as well as CUCCR, our next site. When you're first approaching a site, what is your process for kind of determining how you're going to translate that? You use interactive media, you use immersive media, and what does it mean to kind of plan out this translation from a physical place to an experience that you're planning for someone else?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The first thing that I always do is a ton of research about the site, like find out as much information as I can. The second thing that I do is I go on repeated visits to the site. So for example, I would come here in the morning and see what kind of activity is going on. I would come here maybe at night, see what kind of animals or other species might be visiting if I'm brave and bold. And then the third thing I do is try to meet up and speak with people who have investments in this site, like Faisal or students or anybody else who might have a relationship to the site. So I think of those as like 3 key steps in kind of knowing a site. And then that informs what kind of media and how to mediate this site.
So there's a circularity, I guess, because you must have some existing relationships in order to select a site, and then that also determines which ones you pursue.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So with the Concordia sites, Faisal and I sat down together, and he has, I think it's like 15 years of experience dealing with waste here at Concordia, if not more. And so we just brainstormed a bit of like what sites would be most of interest to students and would also have something to show. So we had a much larger list, and then we kind of whittled it down bit by bit. Yeah, so so in the first stage, it's also a lot of consultation.
Most of our succeeding questions are for CUCCR, are related to the process of CUCCR. So maybe also you had set up this walk. Your suggestion was the idea of a problem and a solution. So maybe you could also speak to that in terms of a Concordia student and alumni driven project.
Excellent. So in the Wastescapes app, which I really hope any of you in this class will be inspired to try out, to come here. If you click on, and it's free, and you just go to the App Store, if you have an Android or if you have an iPhone, and you download Wastescapes, and then you look on the map, and it would take you over to CUCCR, which is not that far away. And the idea is kind of to visualize the materiality of waste, but also to speak to how really innovative people at Concordia, like Ariane, who you're about to meet, are thinking and making use of our waste materials in creative ways. So maybe what we could do is just consult with the app and kind of follow the path and go over to CUCCR now. Okay.
We're just gonna walk over to CUCCR. You can look away if this is fine.
Is he filming us? Okay. Well, this is amazing that we get to visit you guys. Have you been here before?
I have been to the new location, so I'm very excited to see it.
It's the new location as of what, like a year?
So just before COVID,
2
November
years.
2019.
Yeah.
We were open the last part of that year, and then in the early part of 2020, and obviously everything was shut down. So here we are. We've been back open since early September. We've seen probably over 200 people at this point. We've had over 200 visits. We've diverted probably close to 8 tons of materials from the landfill and saved our community. I don't even know how much money at this point, but it's pretty exciting. So in normal time, with my partner Anna, so we started this whole crazy ride. So in normal times, you'd come through the gate over there, and we have our signboard up, and the door would be in an unlocked state, so you could come on in.
Right.
And it's all based on appointment. So because of COVID, we do need to do it by appointment. And we're open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 1 to 5. You can book on our website, concordia.ca/CUCCR. And then you can come during the time that you've scheduled with us and browse materials and take stuff away for new projects. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I ever showed you this, but basically, if you unlock it, here's the photos that we took together.
Nice.
Just some details. And then Faisal, which eventually could be your voice.
My name is Faisal, and I am Concordia's environmental specialist. I have been working on waste management projects here since right about when I was about to graduate in 2008. It's been a long time. So we're standing here at the Grey Nuns garden, right in front of the cafeteria.
Anyways, you get the feeling.
Yeah.
And eventually it could be your voice, could be Anna's voice. But it's basically just a prompt to get students here and then discover what you're doing, which I think is what we're about to do, is just continue on.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Go inside. Gonna put my mask on.
So it's absolutely beautiful time here.
Once you've come here, you won't get lost a second time, but it's definitely like a treasure hunt, which is why the app is so fun, because you don't get lost. So just follow me. I have no idea if you can see anything with this lighting, but you're about to discover a treasure trove of reused objects and materials that are here and available for you. I am the roving mic, so you have to be near me if they're to hear you.
Excellent.
Wow, check this out. One of my favorite parts of this is the maps that you showed me the last time I was here. I know there's like sewing materials and school supplies, but what I'd really love to do, and maybe Anna, you should be right next to me, the roving mic.
Hello.
I know this is like your baby, your passion, your seed idea. And I know that there's some questions. So maybe I could just ask you to tell me about how you came up with this idea.
Sure. Excellent. CUCCR was started as part of my master's research. I was originally a high school art teacher out in BC, and I came to Montreal to do my master's in art education. And I was working with a bunch of pre-service teachers working in community sites and schools. And they were going through the same struggles that I had experienced by not really being able to find the materials or spending a lot of their own money on materials for students for their lesson plans. And this kind of disconnect was really like apparent to see that the university and many places just discarded things that they no longer needed, but there was people that really could use them and use them for new projects, but they just couldn't access them. So I did a bunch of research and looked at other sites and proposed this idea in 2017. Well, actually 2016, and then spent the year opening our first location in the Hall building. And that was sort of the pilot version. And then we moved into Grey Nuns space in November 2019, and we've been here since. So yeah, it's been a little bit of everything. You know, we've been really active in helping other projects get started too, seeing students doing work, but also seeing a lot of community members that just needed to access materials and wanted to make things or have an opportunity just to supply them some things for their houses. So all of it, everyone is welcome. You don't have to be a Concordian. So it's really a great space to come and check out before you have to go and buy anything.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. What a beautiful expression of how a master's project can become something so useful to the community and have a life beyond a degree.
Yeah, and it's really so wonderful because we've been able to make a whole job out of giving gifts. I mean, really, there's no money. So it's just like people come in and they find material or something that they've been looking for. And they're like, you don't even know, I've been trying to find something like this. And just to be able to kind of have that exchange or to problem solve a project or to think about a new idea has really been wonderful.
That makes total sense to me because in addition to a place, you are a teacher and you care about art. And so you're also like this amazing resource for people.
Yeah, we're so lucky to have like kind of a plethora of different kinds of skills. I mean, my focus, was in visual arts and more in kind of that traditional sense. And then Ariane has the kind of technical build and design experience. So kind of paired together, we can take something and think about what ways it could be used maybe untraditionally. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It's interesting because Wastescapes is intended to be an augmented educational platform so that you can be in a site and learn more. But I'm also really always thinking about the materiality of waste of our cell phones and the fact of like all of the waste that goes into the creation of my cell phone, but also after my cell phone expires, which usually they estimate like 3 to 6 years of life, if you're lucky. But I know you even have like electronic media here, you know, and we see, this is one of the things I think so many of us are implicated in and really don't have a sense of what happens later.
Well, and as things digitized, the university digitized, we also got a lot of old media. So like things like cassette tapes and, things that were used for a time and maybe not so popular now, but they hold a real history piece. And without that, they would have just gone straight into the dumpster, never to be used again. But now we've seen lots of really interesting projects come through using that kind of old media, which is pretty exciting too. So yes, and
yeah, it's true. One of the my primary donations to this space, I think it was a couple of years ago, was I have a collection of about 300 VHS tapes, and I had no idea what to do with them because I can't use them in the classroom anymore. So somebody made some, I think,
Mhm.
through this reuse circuit, somebody made quite a beautiful installation using the materiality of those VHS tapes. So thanks to CUCCR.
Yeah.
I think we have some other questions.
Sure.
You may have to be close to me and the
Yeah.
mic in order
no
to,
worries.
Glad you close the front here.
That's great.
I'm just the mic.
So this question about kind of materials and content brings in, someone had asked about the rhythm of materials that you see passing through here. What are the patterns that you observe? Are there things that are loved and move really quickly? Are there things that you've had since you piloted the project that you can't seem to pass on again?
Yeah, it really depends on the material. So for instance, we have, like we were just talking about everything digitizing, and we end up getting a lot of the old things that would hold paper. So one of them being file folders. Most of them hanging file folders. We have hundreds of them. So if you are working on campus or you need file folders, don't buy that, come to us first. But it's one of many mediums tends to hang out here for a while. And more we're trying to find different ways of like upcycling them into new things. But then we'll get things like used canvases from a department in fine arts, and those will just go like hotcakes. Like once we have them in the space and word spreads that they're available, they disappear within maybe a week or two, particularly at peak times of the semester when students are creating new works. But it's really going to depend. Once upon a time, we had about 600 beach pails with the little shovel, and it was slow to start, but eventually they got really popular. I think at one point we had a group of beaver scouts come in. They were like 8 years old and they were super into it. They were building a Rube Goldberg machine, and it worked just right for their project. So it really depends on the material. Things move fast or slow depending even on the visitors. You know, some will be like, oh, that's not for me, and then the next day somebody comes in and, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need. So it really depends.
Yeah, we also do some cycles of collection. So the way that it works is that all of the materials are from on campus. Sometimes we'll get an email from a department or a professor who is like cleaning out their office or the end of the semester, and we'll be able to get a large amount of material in one shot. Other times we have collection bins set up in key studios or departments where there's kind of a reoccurring donation that happens throughout the year. And when that bin is full, we'll come and collect it. Or we do an end of semester reclamathon where it's like very intentional. We send out a lot of bins, do some promotion, and get people to bring usable items to put into those bins, and then we collect from there. So it's sort of like there is a flow of things changing, but it's not as predictable as like Monday is donation day, and then by Tuesday open, it's all new stuff. And then when we did the move, we did see some things that we had opened with, like materials that was there from the very, very beginning. And so we had to decide what we would do with them. And most of it got put back out again because we were expanding in size. And surprisingly, in a new location, in a new kind of context, it was desirable again. And some of that stuff went. I mean, there is always a small percentage of material that comes in here that is not usable and eventually will end up in the waste stream. I mean, you think about all of this material, it's not really recyclable. It's all things that will eventually end up in the landfill. And this project is really about how many more times can it be reused before we decide that its life is done, you know? And so by keeping things kind of visible and out of the system, then we, open up an opportunity at least. So it's not like, a solution. It's kind of a stopgap, but an important one.
It's super interesting what you ask about cycles of waste, because one of the things that I learned in speaking to Faisal was also, for example, when students move out at the end of a semester, there is just an unbelievable excess of things that are left in rooms, that are left in the street, bikes even, that are left like all over. And so the university really has its own unique challenges of dealing with things that are left behind. And moving day is one of those really big.
And we tackled that a few years ago because as we were starting to move here, we were seeing the impact that the move out here in the Grey Nuns residence, as well as the one at Loyola, was having. And so we intervened and started a residence-specific reclamathon in May, the early days of May, when the students move out. And we were able to recuperate about 3 tons of materials, most of it being clothing, which we then quickly diverted away from the university for the most part to places like Dans la Rue and other organizations that need it. And then a lot of winter gear would go to the International Students Office here on campus for students that would arrive here without thinking about, oh, I need winter boots or whatever, so they could go there. Even sometimes a pair of skates. And so thinking about that and helping to intervene there. And some of the materials would end up coming directly here, so housewares, things like that. So yeah, just trying another way to divert more of the waste that we have on campus.
That is so brilliant. The idea of recycling winter clothes to new students who come from tropical environments and have to buy all that stuff.
And also cycling the stuff that's used in residence on a yearly basis. Absolutely. Rooms and things like that. And there's been a change. There's been a shift in mindset in the people that work here in the residence to putting more emphasis on reuse in their own things that they use in the building. So we're seeing a shift there, which is really interesting to see.
That is so interesting. I think the last time I visited you, you were about to do some sort of training with staff, and it was about that, right? So what are the key things you're hoping that people who work in cleanliness and waste kind of take away, or is it about
just to make it mainstream in their day-to-day? I mean, it seems like rocket science to some, but it's so simple, to think about, okay, if this broom is still good, but I'm not going to throw it in the bin, I'm going to put it in the closet, and it's going to come out for new students that arrive in January or in the next school year. So it's just that little shift of like, okay, put it here rather than here, and it has a new life.
And so many people, I know you have another question, but so many people ask me, can we get lost in the micromanagement of our waste? Like, how do we make these scalar connections so that we're kind of managing our own consciousness and awareness, but also holding those accountable who make the waste? Like, what would our world look like if the SAQ actually returned our wine bottles, or, whether the producers themselves had some accountability for the waste that they're creating? Like, how different would that make our lives?
I mean, it might put us out of a job, and that's okay.
You'd be back in the classroom, right?
But yeah, it's all about just trying to make that little shift to a different way of life. And yes, manufacturer responsibility is a big part of that. But it's also how do we help people to think differently, and are the common thing that Anna always says is we have so much abundance already. Right. This is all.
Do we need
free,
more?
Right? We need more space for more abundance, but there's so much in the world already, and that's been confirmed by scientists at this point, is that we have now more human-made mass than there out of the ground than there is left biomass in the ground. So thinking about that, we have so much already, and thinking differently about that material.
So it's getting people to change their buying behavior too. I mean, it is the responsibility of, the company that makes it. But if you hold on to it and it doesn't disappear and like become kind of invisible, and you can see that it's like keeps popping up, there's more opportunity to have an intervene point, and a little bit more of like, when you gather something together in like, like group it together, there's a visual cue that says like, this is a problem. And so, I mean, I look around and I see abundance, and but I also see overconsumption, and like a lot of material that's being purchased every year that doesn't necessarily end up in here that we're missing. And so there's just so much already. think about it.
I love that. As the camera was roving around the space, I think that idea of thinking about like the visualization of abundance and how the site is both solution, but makes it obvious to us what's not being reused.
And it's really interesting for people that work in different parts of the university to come and see, oh, like I recognize some of this, but all of this came from the university. Like, what areas and departments am I not seeing? And then also they go back to their unit and say, oh, I saw that there. Maybe I should be saving that. Maybe I shouldn't discard it. Like maybe it could come here instead. So that also is like a cue to say, these are useful materials and, they're important to someone. So I'm not going to just assume that nobody wants it and throw it straight away. I'm going to reach out and inquire and see if we want to send it to Sucker.
Yeah.
I have a question of my own, just based on the kind of earlier conversation about VHS tapes is sort of the obvious example of obsolescence, but then things like file folders that we don't think about, and how has doing this work, and this is really a question for both projects, I think, changed your definition of obsolescence in materiality?
Well, I think that it's only obsolete if there's nobody there to use it again. I mean, changing the way that it's viewed. Yes, VHS tapes, like maybe they're not being reported on or being used in the same way. But the file folders, although there are many, they will eventually run out. I mean, people will use them for new projects. We had an artist that actually did a whole installation by painting directly on them and then bending that wire armature to make it stand up 3D. And that was a really creative way to do something alternative. So, yeah.
I have a little story about that, which is that on Friday, I led one of the Wastescapes tours. And by chance, there were two students who had brought cameras with them. And both of them happened to be cameras that their grandfathers had given them. Wow. And they were analog photography and like these stunning cameras that had really not been reused, but had been passed through generations. And there was this incredible like care and intrigue and affect relationship to this camera, as if they were kind of mediating a family member who's no longer alive in this tour. And so I was just thinking and comparing like this idea of this camera that has reclaimed value. It's like it kind of lost value when everything went digital, but it's through the granddaughter that there's like a new value assigned. And so it made me think about like the cell phone that we're using to do the Wastescapes tours. And again, what's our relationship? And what can't we pass on to another generation? And so how do we kind of live in between these different value systems? One is like the value system of convenience and mode and fashion and ultimately obsolescence, and the other is a value system of what we inherit and what we care for and what we keep. So it's moments like that sometimes that are like these surprise encounters where I am thinking about materiality and I'm thinking about objects and I'm thinking about, I guess, the downfall of obsolescence is that there isn't this kind of ability to pass care from one generation to another, with something like a cell phone.
Well, and one thing we've seen a lot in the last 4 years that we've been open is this mind shift. People come here first time and they're like, oh, it's a store and I can expect to get this. And then quickly realize that they need to come with a general idea first and then think about materials. And it's become this sort of brainstorming space, and somebody will come in and be like, oh, I need to make this, but there's none of that here. And they're like, well, what about this? Or what about that? And then they're like, oh, okay. And then they start to see the potential and the potential of used materials, and something that they weren't expecting opens up and everything changes.
We've also seen a lot more care in terms of people thinking about how to repair or reuse something again. So they see it on the shelf, or they just are really taking a little bit of extra time to think about the things that they love and how are they going to keep them for longer. And that's a perfect segue of into, we're doing a mending and making session this afternoon at 3:30. And so that kind of mentality and promotion of skills of how to repair your sweater, how to, you know, make sure you shine your boots before winter. Like, how are you caring for your things so that they have the opportunity to be used again? And of course, there is, like, you know, many things to talk about in terms of like the way that the system is built to fail, and you to buy it again every 3 to 6 years or whatever, 3 to 6 months or 3 to 6 days. I don't know. But like, how do we combat that by adding extra time and energy and skill and keeping our things alive? So, yeah.
Really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I had one other question. Can I ask this question? So one of the things that's really challenging as a communicator in communication studies is communicating scale. And you use the word like, we saved this many tons. And sometimes when I hear these terms, I'm like, I don't actually know if I know how to translate that. So you, for example, said you told me how many tons that you save a year, but like, how could we help understand what you mean by that? Like, what is a ton of garbage? You know, it's like, is there a metaphor that I could walk away with today to help story the scale of waste?
The elephant.
The classic
Yes.
one is how many elephants, but
Okay.
if you don't really,
No.
if you've never seen an elephant,
Yeah.
that's kind of hard to
But
to
what,
gauge
there's
as well.
about 3 tons of material in this space right now.
Okay. Oh, that's helpful.
So
That's
like,
good. I like that.
we check in everything as it comes into our space, and then we check it out as the individual takes it away. So we have metrics of diversion of kind of both states. And I'd say that usually we run about a 3-ton kind of middle place. I mean, it may be a little bit different because we have a bit of a storage space, but yeah, I'd say that that's probably a reasonable way to look at it.
And
So 3 elephants in this
3
space.
elephants in this room. Grey Nuns.
I mean, in
Three.
the
Cute.
first 4 weeks that we were open for the semester this year, it was almost half a ton diverted. So just people checking everything out from like a button to a piece of 2x4.
And we had about what, 200 visitors?
And we had about 200 visitors in that time frame. And we're now close to 8 weeks into the semester. So you might think that that's doubled in that time. We're in a strange year too. So in normal times, we would see somewhere between 50 and 70 visitors in a single opening shift. So 4-hour time frame. And now because of our appointment system, we're seeing more like 20 to 30. But even still, people are taking stuff away for new projects and they're excited about it.
Yeah, and they're coming maybe with more of a plan to take more as opposed to just a pop in and grabbing a few things. So like really coming here, planning their project, deciding what they need, and then coming back to take it away. We've had much like larger checkouts, I'd say, than kind of the casual visitor that we may have had before. So that's an interesting kind of shift. And I mean, we also have to add in the fact that we're not doing a lot of our workshops. We don't have the internships that we had in previous years. There's not the same kind of opportunities to like sit and make that adds to the exodus of material. So this is just for people coming to get material and then to leave and work with it somewhere else. And so that's, a little bit different.
Yeah. It's really exciting to see the ways that both projects have pivoted also to facilitate contact and points of contact. Like I feel like I see this direct shift in your work away from the VR towards moments of actually embodied placemaking. And likewise with, I think the elevator pitch about CUCCR concentrates so much on this space and the information about, for example, these care packages that one of our students asked about, programs that really kind of mediate these points of direct contact, and how do you invite people in? How do you create that space of hospitality and connection?
Oh, that's a beautiful observation. It's true. And like what happens, and I love that as the continuation of you saying, the kind of approach you invite in here, which is it's not the consumerist who goes to the space exactly with what is going to happen, but it's with an open mind to see what might evolve. And I think that's a lot about place-based pedagogies and site-based media, which is that the media is an invitation to further explore. It's not meant to be an end game. You know, it's kind of a prompt, and then you see what happens.
Yeah, and we're so lucky to just be able to build relationships, and that's also why we continue to see members coming back and greet them and really be so excited to hear about their progression and their projects and what they're working on. And I mean, it is a like little point of contact, a little moment, and it was actually like very like emotional to come back in and have everybody back in the space. You know, like we really missed the community, and yeah, we pivoted as much as we could, but you know, it's really wonderful to have people here to say hello and to check in, and so we're really excited to have people back in the space. Yeah.
Thanks for visiting.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting us.
Oh.
Yep. No.
That's the timer. Oh, perfect.
That good?
Yeah. Thank you all so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. That was so fun. That was great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. This was the first of their walking throughs,
Nice.
right? Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it goes a really fun
Anna,
one
do you
to
want to
start
go
with.
to an outro?
Yeah, sure.
Good at performance
Maybe
and
I'll
figuring
just
it out.
mute that mic that we're hearing now. Okay, so sorry, Liz, I just muted you. Anyway, I guess I did ask folks in the Zoom if they had any follow-up questions. Nobody really piped up, so maybe since we still have a few minutes, if anything bubbled up to the surface for people in here, this is your time to kind of unmute yourself and ask a question or put it in the chat and we'll read it out for everybody. But in absence of that, we will, I guess, conclude this initial lab walk sub-series of the Space Lab Walkthrough series for the classes. And so I really appreciate that some of you were able to join us today live for this occasion. Otherwise, as somebody already asked in the chat, and I did put a link in there, we are live streaming these events on our YouTube channel, which makes them immediately available on our YouTube channel as a recording, so you can check that out. Now, there is one question in the chat that I'm just making sure that Keone or Doug is in there and they can hear me when I ask this question. So I will just go ahead and read it out. Bruno asks if CUCCR has any artwork examples or people just take out the material and do their own thing with it. Well, Bruno, I think I can answer that to say, I think they just take it out and do their own thing with it, and they don't necessarily bring it back to CUCCR. Although, if those folks can hear us, let me just go into a gallery view. Then
I'll
maybe
just use this mic, Anna.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So although the space right now is mostly for materials to take away, we do have some examples of things that people have made in the space. But you really have to come and check it out. It's not like a library of how-to or lesson plans, but you can definitely come here and get ideas about what people have made before.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anna. I don't see any other questions, so we may just fizzle out, but there are lots of excited comments from folks who didn't know about CUCCR, didn't know about Liz Miller's work either. And it was really great to have Liz there with us in conversation with Aryan and Anna, just to experience kind of both projects. So I hope everybody checks out the Wastescapes app that Liz has developed in collaboration with some of these folks. Just look up Wastescapes and then app, and then you'll find it if you missed the link in the chat. And yeah, go visit CUCCR. And like I said, now there's a kind of a schedule to sign in, obviously, during these unprecedented times, but there's always somebody there to welcome you in and have you look around and take what you need. So thanks so much for being here. Thank you for the people on site, Liz, Anna, Ariane, Douglas, Keone, Cecilia, everybody who is in this space. I'm glad you didn't get rained on, and thanks for taking us through the tour. It looks fantastic. Great work, great camera work, Doug. That looks really good. So, okay, we'll close up now, I think, Doug, unless there's any other shots you want to.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thanks everybody for being here. I'll close the Zoom now. See you next time. Bye. Ciao.